Hello everyone, it's Fu here, back for another Why You Should Use video with my buddy John, and today we're looking at Hatterene, the new psychic fairy type Pokemon based on a witch, looking beautiful in all those pastel colours. It's a really strong Pokemon too, can't wait to get into it because it's got some really interesting abilities and stuff that we definitely want to discuss. But before that, John, what's over on your channel?
We're going to be looking at Grimsnarl, kind of the opposite. It's really cool looking, very creepy, covered in hair. I don't know exactly what's going on there. We can dive a little bit deeper into that. But first, we need to go over Hatterene. This is the silent Pokemon. As Sam said, it's really crazy when you see it come up behind you in the wild area. It can freak you out. It is the Forest Witch, and that's not the scariest part about it, as this Pokemon actually has a 136 special attack stat. Really cool stats in general. The fact that it has 490 and above, especially as a, especially offensive and defensive Pokemon like this, I did not expect 90 attack and 95 defense. It's cool to see that it's a little bit more specialized. The 29 speed isn't super important. There's things that it has that will help out there, but the 57 HP is killing me and Sam. If you can get rid of that attack and just throw some of it into HP, this thing would be unstoppable and so fun to use. It is still a great Pokemon, and we'll explain how you use it, but that 57 HP stat is really staring at us. Psychic Fairy makes a lot of sense just with the lore of the Pokemon, the colors of the Pokemon. Really cool typing, especially on the offensive side, as Psychic types do not like going against those pesky Dark types, and the Fairy typing is obviously going to help out a huge amount there. Looking at the abilities, it has 3 of them, but Magic Bounce really stands out above Healer and Anticipation. One of the best abilities out there, and really cool on this specific Pokemon.
So now we have to look at the attacks that can go with that massive special attack stat, and it does have some really good ones. It's got Psychic and Psyshock, both powerful Psychic type attacks that hit on the special defense and the defensive side respectively, so that's really good for mixing up your attacks. And then you've got Dazzling Gleam that can hit the dark types, as John said. We've got Giga Drain here and Mystical Fire as some elemental coverage, which is pretty cool. And also Shadow Ball and Dark Pulse to hit other psychic types, which otherwise might be a bit of a problem. Stored Power gives you a nice option for setup. And then actually it's got some physical moves, because that base 90 attack stat isn't awful. So you've got Play Rough and Psycho Cut there. And lastly, Nuzzle, which is a really interesting move that you can paralyze your opponents with. In terms of setup, it gets Calm Mind, which is fantastic because this Pokemon is going to get even more powerful and boost that special defense, which is already very good. You've got Trick Room, which is very good for this Pokemon because it's so slow. You'll be outspeeding everything and going for sweeps with it, which is crazy. You've got Swords Dance, boosting that physical attack, which is actually usable. And then in terms of utility, loads of really nice supporting moves too. You've got Thunder Wave to cripple opponents, Baton Pass, if you're setting up Calm Minds, you can pass them on to the next Pokemon. Healing Wish can fully heal another of your team members. And Life Dew in max raids, for example, Life Dew is helpful for healing 4 Pokemon at one time. Magic Powder I'm very excited about because it turns a Pokemon into the Psychic type. It sounds really random, but I think situationally it could be very fun on some gimmick sets. And finally, it gets Screens to help out with its defenses, which will be helpful because its HP stat isn't the best, so more defense is always better. It's also really important to talk about this Pokemon because it does have a Gigantamax form. This form looks really cool. It's very scary. What it does is it turns its fairy type attacks into G-Max Smite instead of G-Max Starfall, which I think is a benefit because G-Max Starfall, it sets up the Misty Terrain, which in terms of offense isn't that helpful. It protects you against status. This thing has Magic Bounce anyway, so you're very unlikely to get status. So actually having G-Max Smite, which confuses the opponent instead, is much more useful offensively.
Now it's time for the fun part as we look at the different movesets the thing can run, and the number one thing that we're going to be talking about is Trick Room, as Trick Room is fantastic for this Pokemon, and the fact that it can set it up itself is amazing. Not only that, but Trick Room will be even more widespread in this generation, as we do have a brand new item, Room Service. Not going to be important on this Pokemon as we don't need to lower its speed, but using this as a Trick Room setter for other Pokemon, Room Service will be helpful in singles and in doubles, and it's just a nice thing to note. But we're gonna have Life Orb on this thing because once you set up a Trick Room, it has such a high special attack stat that you really want to try to sweep. There's only so many rooms of Trick Room anyway, so really want to take advantage of that. Magic Bounce is going to be the ability almost every single time. It's just so incredible, and it's going to prevent people from stopping you from setting up Trick Room, which is really nice. Max HP, max special attack. you know, you don't need to invest in anything else. Obviously, you want as little speed as possible. So if you can get 0 speed IVs on this Pokemon as well, if it's going to be Trick Room, that could be really, really important. You know, max special attack with the Quiet Nature, which is going to lower your speed. Trick Room, Psychic and Fairy coverage, so Psychic, Dazzling Gleam. And the final thing, either a Mystical Fire for coverage, or you could have Healing Wish on there. So at the end of your Trick Room, maybe your last turn, you can Healing Wish and then heal up another Pokemon and finish the game off with that.
The next set is far more offensive, if you can imagine, because Trick Room is pretty offensive as it is, but this thing is choice specs. So you've got a massive special attack stat, and we are going to take it to the extreme. The ability is going to be Magic Bounce again. It's going to be a Magic Bounce on pretty much all of these sets because it's such a good ability. And the EVs are looking similar too, with HP and special attack investment. And here you can go for the Modest or the Quiet Nature. I would tend to go with Modest, but if you are on a Trick Room team, then Quiet is the one to go for. If you do go with Modest, you might want to add in a little bit of speed even, because the things like Toxapex that are lurking around that speed, and outspeeding them can be quite helpful. In terms of the moves, again, we're going to have a Psychic type move, either Psychic or Psyshock. Psyshock is very helpful for hitting specially defensive walls really hard, especially with the specs. You can generally take them out quite easily. Dazzling Gleam there, again, great stab coverage, and Shadow Ball for the Psychic types. And we put Mystical Fire here because that's really nice for hitting the Steel types. Pretty simple set, but should be pretty darn effective too.
Moving away from these strictly offensive sets, we find a very, very fun set that Sam came up with. I really love the idea behind this. And the main idea behind this max defensive Hatterene is to make sure it's alive as long as possible. Obviously, you see Calm Mind, Dazzling Gleam, Stored Power. It can set up and actually beat a team by itself, but Magic Bounce is such a good ability and one that you don't see on a ton of Pokemon. You want it around as long as possible, and you know, during your matches, so nothing can get up hazards on you. You know, annoying utility moves or status moves. You can bring this in every time, and when it starts to get low, you rest up. You have Sleep Talk. You can just make sure this thing, you know, is surviving hit after hit, healing up and really harassing your opponent's team. Now, the fact that it has Calm Mind is going to allow you to completely invest in defense. We do have 44 speed just to speed tie some important things, Toxapex being a very, very important one. You know, you don't want something to be able to haze this Pokemon, because even with Magic Bounce, it is going to affect, you know, both of the Pokemon. You'll lose all of your Calm Minds. That would be awful. So just a little bit of speed creeping will be really important for some of these super slow Pokemon out there. But Calm Mind, Rest, Sleep Talk, and then either Dazzling Gleam or Stored Power, just depending on if you want something a little bit more reliable with Dazzling Gleam, or if you really want to set all the way up and decimate things with that Stored Power move.
So we'll move on to a similar looking set. We wanted to demonstrate that Hatterene does have a usable physical attack stat, and especially with the Sword Stance, this thing looks very similar to the set we've just talked about, but instead of Calm Mind, we've got Sword Stance. We've obviously got an Impish nature because we don't want to reduce the attack any further. We've got Sword Stance, Rest and Sleep Talk, and then the attacking move Play Rough. Play Rough is perfect on this because nothing is immune. It's a relatively high base power move, and after a Sword Stance it will be doing a lot of damage. You can also run this set as a specially defensive set because you're not running Calm Mind, you're not boosting your special defense up. It doesn't matter which defense you go for, so this thing might be better specially defensive on your team. But yeah, it's really nice, and just a way to have a bulky Hatterene around. You've got that Magic Bounce through the match, keeping it healthy with Rest, but also having some offensive presence there with the Sword Stance and the Play Rough. It's a little bit more gimmicky than the ones we've talked about so far, but it can catch people off guard, and it can be really hard to know what to do with a bulky Hatterene that has a massive attack stat after a few Sword Stances. So really interesting one to try if you're interested in this.
The final single set we're going to be looking at is an Assault Vest set, and normally this would just be, you know, a standard run-of-the-mill Assault Vest. It's a bulky Pokemon, really high special attack set. Obviously, putting that Assault Vest on it is going to make sure this thing can take a bunch more hits and really fire back with that really powerful stat. You know, Modest Nature, just give it as much power as possible. Psyshock, Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball, coverage, and, you know, business as usual. But Nuzzle is the final move, and I really, truly love it. You know, first off, I think most people aren't going to realize this thing gets Nuzzle. It is an egg move, and it doesn't really make a ton of sense on this Pokemon, but having a, you know, attacking move that you can put on with Assault Vest that always is going to paralyze the opponent is just incredible. You can really harass opponents, really cripple some of your opponent's better Pokemon, and they won't expect it. I really love it. It's just some nice secret tech on this Mon, and I think it would be so much fun to try out and use.
The last thing we're going to talk about today is the doubles format, and Hatterene definitely has some tricks up its sleeves in this format, despite not having any arms. So it's got some really great support moves to talk about. It's got Life Dew that can heal itself and its partner for 25%. It's also got Heal Pulse, which only heals its partner but for a considerable amount more. And it's also got Aromatic Mist, so this boosts its partner's special defense stat. All ways to really support a bulky attacking partner, for example, and doing a lot, just lasting a lot longer on the field. Obviously, with that massive special attack stat, you can deal some massive damage too, so its usual attacking moves are great, and Dazzling Gleam, because it hits both opponents, is very helpful here too. Thunder Wave is great speed control. Obviously with Hatterene, even against a paralyzed opponent, you're probably not going to be outspeeding them because you're so slow. So that's where Trick Room comes in, and that's probably going to be its main role in doubles. As a Trick Room setting Mon, with the Magic Bounce not being able to be taunted, that's fantastic and really gives you so much capability there. In terms of partner ideas, we think that fighting type Pokemon will be really beneficial together with each other. Fighting types can take out Hatterene's much feared steel types, so that will be very helpful. Also, obviously Trick Room Pokemon, so anything that's really slow but very powerful will be a great partner for Hatterene, and combining those first 2 points, Conkeldurr is looking to be really nice here. Also, maybe things that have Fake Out to help it get the Trick Room up on that first turn will be helpful too. The last thing we put here is bulky attackers. Examples are things like Cursula is a really good example this time. It's very slow but very powerful. These two next to each other could cause some real damage. So that's Hatterene, a slow Pokemon, nice in Trick Room, very powerful, got some bulk there, and its amazing Magic Bounce ability gives it so many options, and you can really play around with its sets. I like this Pokemon a lot. There are some things that it's lacking, but I think it's got enough going for it that you can be very creative to get around any boundaries that you might face. Over on John's channel, we've talked all about Grimsnarl, which is another really cool fairy type, but on a very different direction. It's dark fairy. You need to check it out, not only for that unique typing, but for the amazing moves it gets and abilities. So check out the sets that we've gone for that. I've been Fu, you've been awesome, and hopefully see you next time. Goodbye.